Hello, this is Math 18, Section 1.4. Today we're going to look at the multiplication of integers. Make sure I have my pen. Okay, so when we are multiplying with any numbers in mathematics, the numbers that are being multiplied are called factors. Okay, so for instance, if you look at the examples below, 3 and 2 are factors. And then the result or the answer that we get is called the product. So whenever you see the word product, that always means multiplication. Now, when parentheses are used down here or the multiplication dot, obviously the first two examples, 3 times 2 with the x, that's okay to use, but eventually it's going to look like a variable x, so you kind of want to stay away from that. The multiplication dot is fine to use, but parentheses can also be used to show multiplication. They can be around both numbers or just one of the numbers. Also, if you see a number and brackets and another number, that also indicates multiplication if there's no other operation sign between the two. Same thing with braces. Anytime you see any of those grouping symbols and there's no other operation sign like between the 3 and the brace or the 3 and the brackets, that also indicates multiplication. So here are our multiplication rules for integers. If we are multiplying two numbers with the same sign, that's two positives or two negatives, the answer is always going to be positive. And if we multiply two numbers with different signs, the answer is always going to be negative. Okay, so this is what you want to remember and make up another index card so that you can use them as flashcards to study and memorize these rules. With multiplication, if the signs are the same, the answer is positive. If the signs are different, the answer is negative. Look at these examples below. -4 times -8, the signs are the same, so I multiply and the answer is going to be positive, and you'd get positive 32. On number 2, 5 times -12, the signs are different, so you multiply, but the answer is always negative. Okay? So here's the short version of your multiplication rules. If you have the same signs, it's always the answer is positive. If you have different signs, the answer is negative. So now the trick is to keep all of these rules separate in your head from the adding and subtracting rules. So think about addition rules for a minute. Remember, if we're adding integers, if the signs are the same, the rule is you add and keep the same sign. If the signs are different, you subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. Now, flip over to the multiplication rules in your head. If the signs are the same, the answer is positive. If the signs are different, the answer is negative. That's the kind of thing you need to be able to do, is talk to yourself with those rules and be able to flip back and forth between them and keep them all straight. So memorize those rules. It'll help you out a lot. Alright, so here's some multiplication problems with signed numbers, with integers. So number 1, we have -5 times -6. The signs are the same, so it's going to be a positive, and 5 times 6 would be positive 30. Number 2, we have positive 3 times -12. The signs are different, so the answer is going to be negative, and 3 times 12 would be 36, so negative 36. Number 3, we have two negatives again. -7 times -9. If the signs are the same, the answer is positive, and 7 times 9 is 63. Now, number 4, we have -8 times 0. And even though the 8's negative, it doesn't matter, because anything times 0 is always 0, no matter what. Now, number 5, we have -13 times 3. A negative times a positive. The signs are different, so it's going to be a negative, and 13 times 3 gives you 39. Number 6, a -4 times a -6. The signs are the same, so the answer is positive 24. So remember, with multiplying integers, same signs, positive. Different signs, negative. Okay? Now let's look at what happens when we have more than just two numbers being multiplied. You can work straight through these problems. Okay, you could say -2 times 5 get negative 10 times a negative 7, be positive times a negative 4. It just gets very confusing. There's a shortcut way to get the answers here. Go through the problem and count how many negative factors you have. Well, we have negative 2 times positive 5 times negative 7 times negative 4. So we have 3 negatives, 3 negative factors. Okay, now look at the rules down below. It says the product of an even number of negative factors is positive. The product of an odd number of factors, negative factors, is negative. Well, that's what we have in this first example. 3 is an odd number. We have 3 negatives, so that means our answer is going to be negative. So I'm going to put the sign there. I already know the sign of my answer. Now I just need to go back and multiply the numbers. So I'm going to group 2 times 5, and that's 10. Notice I didn't say negative 2. It's just I've already figured out my sign, so I can completely ignore the signs at this point. And then 7 times 4 is 28, and then 10 times 28 would just be 280. And your final answer is a negative 280 because you figured out the sign first. So if you do that first, it's going to make your life a lot easier. Now look at this next one. We have 6 times negative 3 times negative 1 times negative 2 times negative 5. If you go back and count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 negative factors. Okay? So look below. The product of an even number of negative factors is always positive. Well, 4 is even. We have 4 negatives. So that means my answer is going to be positive. Now, no, you do not have to write that plus sign. But if you do, you know you've already taken care of your signs. So I'm going to group the first 3 numbers since the third one is a 1. So 6 times 3 is 18 times 1 is 18. And then 2 times 5 is 10. And 18 times 10 gives me 180. So it's a positive 180. All right, so let's look at these. On this first example here, we have negative 1. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negative 1s and a negative 5. So there's 6 negatives there. Okay, so we multiply. Okay, first of all, with 6 negatives, I know it's going to be a positive answer. So think about all these ones. 1 times 1 is still 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. That's still all going to be 1 times 5 would just be positive 5. Notice when I multiplied, when I started to go back and do the numbers, I don't look at the signs because I figured out the sign of the number first, the sign of my answer. Okay? Look at the next example. Negative 2 times 3 times negative 6. So I have 2 negative factors. Well, 2 is an even number, so that means I'm going to have a positive answer. So 2 times 3 is 6 times 6. I'm going to get a positive 36. All right, so pause the video, try these on your own, and I'll go through them in a sec. All right, number 1, multiply. Negative 8 times 6. The signs are different. That means the answer is going to be a negative 48. Number 2, negative 5 times negative 10. The signs are the same, so we're going to get a positive 50. On number 3, we have 3 numbers, but they're all positive, so the signs are the same all the way across. So 7 times 9 is 63 times 1, so not adding, but multiplying, times 1 would still be 63. And number 4, now we're getting into the longer ones. So we want to look at how many negative factors we have. We have negative 3 times negative 2 times negative 4. That's 3 negative factors. That means my answer is going to be negative. So if I do 3 times 2, that's 6, times 4 would be negative 24. Now, number 5, I have 1, 2, 3 negatives again. So I have negative 1 times negative 4 times negative 6, and times 5. Those 3 negatives are going to have a negative answer. So now I'm going to go back and do the numbers. 1 times 4 is 4, and 6 times 5 is 30. And then 4 times 30 gives me a negative 120. All right, on number 6, we have negative 4 times 2 times negative 1 times 5. So if you look at the negative factors, we have 2 negative factors, which means our answer is going to be positive. So now multiply your numbers. 4 times 2 is 8, and 1 times 5 is 5, and then 8 times 5 gives us positive 40. All right. Here's the rest of the U tries. Hopefully you saw that second part. If not, we'll just go through this together. So on number 7, we have negative 2 times 6 times 3 times 0. Now, if you don't really look at this, you're like, okay, one negative, I know it's going to be a negative, and you'd say negative 2 times 6 is negative 12 times 3, and that's okay, and then all that, and then you get to 0. Well, what's anything times 0? Just plain old 0. No positive, negative, nothing. Just 0. So look through the whole problem, because sometimes you do all this hard multiplication at the beginning and anything times 0 is going to be 0. So you did all that work for nothing. So be careful. Number 8, we have negative 7 times negative 10 times 1. So we have 2 negatives, which means our answer is going to be positive. 7 times 10 is 70. Times 1 would still just be 70. Number 9, we have 2 positive numbers. 8 times 9, that's just going to be positive 72. Now number 10, we have negative 3 times negative 7 times negative 5. So I have 3 negative factors. So if we do 3 negatives, remember that's going to be a negative answer. So now 3 times 7 is 21 times 5, break down the 5, and that would give you a negative 105. On number 11, I have negative 1 times negative 6 times negative 2 times a positive 4. So I have 3 negatives again. Okay, so 3 is an odd number, which means I'm going to have a negative answer. Okay, so go back and group these. 1 times 6 is 6, and 2 times 4 is 8. So 6 times 8, I'm going to have a negative 48 for number 11. And number 12, we have negative 2 times 2 times negative 2 times 2. So if you look all the way across, we have 2 negatives. So if you have an even number of factors, that means your answer is going to be positive. And now let's go back and group them. 2 times 2 is 4, and the other 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 4 is going to be 16, positive 16. So hopefully you did okay on those U tries. Alright, so now we're going to look at some phrases that indicate multiplication. So we have negative 7 times pretty obvious, times negative 9, we multiply. Anytime they talk about product, we've talked about that before. Product is always multiplication, the product of 12 and negative 8. Multiplied by would be just what it says, negative 15 multiplied by 11. Okay, and the last one, twice, always means 2 times something or times 2. Okay, so but it's always by 2, multiplying by 2. So twice negative 14 would be 2 times negative 14. All right, so let's look at some of these problems. It says find the product of negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, and negative 5. So product is multiplication. So we're going to multiply negative 2 times negative 3 times negative 4 times negative 5. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 negative factors, okay, which means I'm going to get a positive answer. All right, so if we go back and group these, okay, 2 times 3, I'm just going to write this out over here, 6, and 4 times 5 is 20. So then we have 6 times 20 would give you a positive 120. All right, number 2, find the product of 15 and negative 8. So product is multiplication, 15 times negative 8. Now look at the signs. They're different, positive and a negative, which means we're going to get a negative answer. And what is 8 times 15? Carry a 4, negative 120. Popular number. All right, and number 3, what is negative 8 times negative 9? So we just multiply negative 8 times negative 9. The signs are the same, so the answer is positive 72. All right, so here's some translating for you to try. So number 1, find the product of -7 and -8. So we want to multiply there, -7 times -8, and that's going to be, the signs are the same, so it's going to be a positive 56. Okay? And if you need to brush up on your multiplication tables, that's always a good thing to do. Look at number 2, -4 times -11. So we're going to write -4 times -11. Now, the signs are the same. They're both negative. They're the same sign, so it's going to be a positive 44. And number 3, multiply 5 by -9. So we're going to have 5 times -9. Well, here we have a positive and a negative, so the signs are different, which means we're going to get a negative 45. And number 4, twice -4. So remember, twice is always 2 times something. So we're going to have 2 times -4. The signs are different, so that's going to be a -8. Okay? So remember, with multiplication rules, if the signs are the same, the answer is positive. If the signs are different, the answer is negative. And that's it for section 1.4.